Welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news, updates, reactions and opinions. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're on our way to 3,000 subscribers. I'm eternally grateful for all of the support that I'm getting. Also, smash a like on the video if you enjoy it. Loads to get into today. I mean, it's midfield mayhem. Truthfully, that's what it is. We've got updates on Lavia, Partey, Havertz, Sambi Lokonga, Gundogan, obviously Declan Rice, and really we are looking at just a complete midfield overhaul this summer. I really want to get into it and really try and figure out where this midfield ends up by the end of the transfer window. So lots of information today from Fabrizio Romano. It almost feels like he's kind of got a dump of information from someone and has now reported it. So starting with Romeo Lavia, who has become a serious target for us since we dropped out of the race for Moises Caicedo. Fabrizio said Arsenal have concrete and strong interest in Romeo Lavia. The relationship is excellent with his camp. Talks already took place. And we said yesterday, Lavia's agent is the same agent as Bukayo Saka. Also turns out it's the same agent Iwobi. Lots of the HLM boys, basically. So we have a good relationship with him. Fabrizio also said the timing will be crucial as Chelsea remain interested. Man United appreciate Lavia but are not advancing. And City have a buyback clause, but it's only valid in 2024. So they can't activate that buyback clause in 2023, which means we could get the deal done ahead of them. Now, this is clearly the big transfer in the number 6 position, in my opinion. It's replaced Moises Caicedo, who was the option. But what Fabrizio goes on to say about Thomas Partey has me slightly concerned about it, because on Partey, Fabrizio said, understand there's a concrete chance for Thomas Partey, sorry, that was the dog shaking. Understand there's a concrete chance for Thomas Partey to leave Arsenal this summer. Clubs are interested and there are discussions about his exit. Current contract expires in June 2025 and there are no talks to extend it as of today. And so it's one of those where if you didn't tie him down this summer, you'd then reach next summer, he'd have a year left on his contract, he'd probably wind it down. So it seems like there is a serious chance that Thomas Partey leaves. And referring back to the Romeo Lavia situation, as good as Lavia is, and he has an exceptionally high ceiling, I don't want Lavia coming in next season and having to play 80-90% of the matches that we play in Premier League and Champions League football. He's 19 years old. Jude Bellingham is the only 19-year-old on the planet that is capable of playing at that level. It would be far better, in my opinion, for Lavia to come in as an understudy to Thomas Partey, even if that means that we lose 20 million on the value of Partey by keeping him for another season. It's worth it for me to give Lavia the chance to be an understudy to Thomas Partey, to not have the pressure next season of performing at the highest level week in, week out, because as I said, as good as he is, I don't think he's ready for that yet. So this Thomas Partey situation is really interesting because it's followed up by Sasha Tavalieri, who has been really good on Arsenal this summer so far, who replied to that and said, you can also add Sambi Lokonga. I'll make news on his future soon. And we've also heard yesterday that Burnley, and particularly Vincent Kompany at Burnley, is really interested in taking Sambi Lokonga. And so then you look at our depth in the midfield position. Obviously, if you assume that we bring in Declan Rice, you're still really only looking at Rice, Jorginho, and Elneny and Lavia as the defensive midfield options. And truthfully, as much as I love Elneny, I don't want him anywhere near the starting lineup next season. There is no game that I would, other than a Carabao Cup game, that I would be comfortable playing Elneny. I don't think he was good enough anyway, and he's just come off the back of a 9-month layoff. So he's not good enough. So then you're talking about Jorginho, Rice, and Lavia. And for me, Rice is going to be the 8. I wholeheartedly believe that he's the 8, which means you've got Jorginho and Lavia. And there are lots of games where I don't think Jorginho is suited to it. And Arteta himself has alluded to that there have been games where we've needed more power and stamina in the midfield. So look, I would keep Thomas Partey. Obviously, there's the off-the-field stuff that I don't really want to touch on, but in general, I would keep Thomas Partey, and it seems like that might not happen. On to Kai Havertz, who for me could play as the left 8. He could play that Granit Xhaka role, but it remains to be seen what Arteta's plan for Kai Havertz is. Fabrizio has said Kai Havertz has been very clear with all parties involved in the deal. He wants to play for Arsenal after the green light on his contract this week. Personal terms agreed, new bid to be submitted soon. Understand there's hope to get the deal done after the international break. But then Pletigo, who I don't massively rate as a source, he's been wrong on quite a few things, especially with basically, he reports a lot that Bayern Munich are interested in players, and I don't think they've ever really had a chance of signing them. But he said, Arsenal has analysed Havertz in detail. Edu and Arteta are convinced that he's the perfect player for the offence. Want him as a versatile striker in addition to Jesus. Havertz convinced about the project. Final negotiations with Chelsea now. Personal terms agreed in principle. So, you know, Platigol thinks he's coming in as a striker. And again, that even further reduces the depth that we would have in the midfield. If you're not bringing in Havertz as a potential option to play the Granit Xhaka role, then Rice has to be that player. And in that case, you are left with Lavia and Jorginho as the defensive options. So I really think if we lose Xhaka, Partey and Sambi Lokonga and bring in only Lavia and Rice, if you're not considering Havertz as a midfielder, you know, we've got ourselves into a position where we can really strengthen the depth of our midfield. And I don't think that's what we end up doing. I think we end up slightly strengthening our midfield by bringing in Declan Rice, but we don't strengthen the depth of our midfield. And I don't want another season of relying and praying on not having players injured. Because all of a sudden, if you say that... And his injury history is very good, Declan Rice, but all of a sudden you say Declan Rice is out for 6 months, that midfield is weaker next season than it is now. So that's a problem for me. Which, again, brings me on to another midfielder. And this time it's Ilkay Gundogan. And it was reported that Gundogan to Barcelona was 85%. It was 85% Barca, 10% any of the clubs in Saudi Arabia, and 5% Arsenal. Gerard Romero, who's quite good on Barcelona stuff, has now said it's only a 50% chance that Gundogan goes to Barcelona, which I think is opening the door, potentially, to Gundogan joining Arsenal. And for me, Gundogan is one of the only players, almost in the world, that has the experience of playing the Granit Xhaka role, because that role is unusual. In itself, that Granit Xhaka role is unusual. Because at points in time, you're covering for Zinchenko at left back when Zinchenko moves into the midfield. And in points in time, you're making inverting, underlapping runs for Martinelli, getting right to the byline. And so it's an unusual thing. And there's been arguments about, you know, it's an unusual role, and is Xhaka actually the best fit for that role? He's done fantastically well in that role, but is he the best fit? Well, Gundogan, for me, is an exceptionally good fit for that role. So if we could bring in him, that would alleviate all of my concerns. You could lose Thomas Partey at that point, because I'd say you could have Rice as the 6 and Gundogan as the 8. And I would be absolutely happy for that to be... If we went into next season with a midfield of Rice, Lavia, Jorginho, Gundogan, fine, and then El Neni, that for me is good enough. That is strong enough, and I'd be very happy with it. So, I mean, look, there's not a huge amount of news on Gundogan other than the fact that his chances of going to Barca have diminished, but that would be massive for me. And that's pretty much all there is. It is, you know, it is ultimately the fact that we could go into next season with a completely new midfield. And I don't know if that is the risk that we need to take. Again, the other risk you're taking is starting the season next season with a brand new midfield. It takes time for players to gel and adapt to each other. You know, Xhaka and Partey had a lot of experience playing together. So again, that's another risk that you take. But we will see what happens. Of course, I will keep you updated across all of my socials and here on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you want to see all of that. Have a fantastic Sunday, and I will catch you all tomorrow. Cheers.